Alright, it's time to get controversial because I'm pretty sure my list is different from everybody else's. Hello and welcome to another episode of Sci-Fi-Night Top 5. The X-Men mini-series continues, and in this video we're listing our top 5 favorite X-Men movies. A lot of people credit Bryan Singer's 2000 film X-Men as a film that brought back comic book movies and showed that they weren't at all the shitfest that is Batman and Robin. But to be fair, the honor of bringing back comic book movies probably goes to 1998's Blade or 1997's Spawn, in that all of these comeback movies had kind of a darker, more mature tone and showed that comic book movies weren't just for kids. Either way, X-Men brought comic book movies into the spotlight in a way that we hadn't seen before, not since the old Batman movies. Superheroes were now cool, mainstream, and of course, profitable.
Outstanding. Try Wolverine's Berry Rampage Sundae. Now that's a box.
Since the first film's release 17 years ago, we've been treated to 8 X-Men films, and with a 9th on the way in the form of Logan, as well as the 2016 Marvel success Deadpool, which featured X-Men in it, obviously we had to do this list. And in what is kind of a Sci-Fi Night Top 5 tradition, of course, we're bringing back our good buddy Joseph Ari to do his own special list as well.
Dum da 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 dum dum da 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 dum dum da 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 dum. Thank you, Sebastian, for having me back on the show. And yes, I absolutely adore the X-Men. I grew up with the original 90s cartoon series and I loved it. And when I first saw Bryan Singer's X-Men in 2000, I was blown away by it. I've been a fan of the comic books, the more serious graphic novels, and the overall franchise throughout my entire life. Even though it had some definite lows, X-Men will always have a special place in my heart.
Alright, 2 things before we kick off. 1. Deadpool will not be counted as technically it isn't a movie about the X-Men, it just has X-Men in it. And 2, we're gonna start off with a dishonorable mention, which goes to X-Men Origins Wolverine. Ugh, this fucking movie. Way to waste Liev Schreiber as a good Sabretooth, way to waste Hugh Jackman as an awesome Wolverine. Oh fuck, what did we do to Deadpool? Oh fuck this movie. Okay, let's get a little bit more proper in the description of this film. So this movie was planned to explain the origins of Wolverine, you know, just kind of like they did in the first 2 X-Men movies, but they just did everything wrong here. This felt like a fucking Michael Bay film, I mean, come on. Butchering Deadpool the way they did was just awful.
Wait, is that you?
That does it! Oh! Canada!
The terrible CGI claws looked like shit, the stupid-ass helicopter scene was just nauseating, and the final fight almost gave me a brain aneurysm. Everything is just too fucking stupid and coked up to describe, and I feel like just talking about it is making me less smart. Seriously, this was just such a huge misfire. They wanted to do some cool stuff, but just did not pull it off. Fuck this film, fuck you director Gavin Hood, fuck you Michael Bay for no reason, fuck the dumbass 14-year-olds who loved this film when I saw it in the theater. I'm done.
Sebastian already gave you a couple disclaimers. I have a couple disclaimers of my own. First of all, yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine is a massive piece of shit. It's a stain on the legacy of the X-Men franchise. Everything about this movie is horrible. I mean, I could talk about the horrendous special effect. Yeah, I mean, my buddy already mentioned the claws. I could mention the continuity issues or the fact that they actually managed to give us a boring version of a Wolverine origin story. But honest to God, I'm not gonna waste my time. I can trash this movie with one simple word: Deadpool. That's right, they fucked Deadpool in the ass. Everything about the Deadpool version of this movie is an insult to comic book fans, to the character, and everything Deadpool related. The only good thing about X-Men Origins Wolverine is Hugh Jackman, because no matter how shitty the film, he always delivers as Wolverine. But since there are so many X-Men movies out there that are so much better than X-Men Origins Wolverine, and they all feature Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, yeah, watch these movies. Even X-Men The Last Stand, some people hate this film. I'm actually okay with it. I do believe it's not a great movie, but I do believe it has some redeeming qualities. X-Men Origins Wolverine is the one movie I can't even begin to defend or make excuses for, because it's just horrible. Second disclaimer, since this video has been postponed over and over again, by now I already saw Logan. I loved it and it would make my number one, but in order to be fair towards Sebastian and the overall theme of X-Men, I've excluded both Deadpool and Logan from my list. So yeah, if you want to hear my thoughts on Logan, I have a review and a spoiler talk on my channel, but Logan will not be on that list. Disclaimers have been disclaimed, let's do this. X-Men Apocalypse. Yeah, a lot of people did not necessarily like that movie, and personally, this is one of the few times where I absolutely disagree with the critics. I think the main problem of X-Men Apocalypse is the fact that it had to follow X-Men Days of Future Past, presumably the most loved entry of the series, but only because it couldn't live up to the quality of X-Men Days of Future Past doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I think it had a lot going for it, and they took a lot of chances. First of all, Eric Lancher, Magneto himself in this film, amazing. They managed to show us a side to him that we have never seen before. We witness Eric Lancher as a father, and the fact that he loses it all again is so tragic. He remains one of the most tragic characters in comic book history. I also love the fact that the School for the Gifted is finally operational in this film, and this movie really built the bridge between the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. I loved the young versions of Scott, Jean, Nightcrawler. I thought they worked really well, and the Wolverine cameo was awesome. One of the main issues that people have with the film is actually Apocalypse and his character motivations. But in all honesty, I just watched this movie again just to prep for this, and I absolutely get behind that guy. All his life, people have treated him like a god, so naturally he has that god complex. So when he wakes up and realizes that people no longer worship him, yeah, it messes with his ego. So he's not your typical I'm gonna destroy it all villain. He is a guy that was literally a god, and he gets pissed when he doesn't get things his way. Obviously, this movie does have some issues. I hate the fact that Jennifer Lawrence almost never looks like Mystique in the film. I mean, what happened to Mutant and Proud? But overall, I thought it was a welcome addition to the X-Men franchise. But now, Sebastian, I'm really interested. Let me know about your number 5.
Alright buddy, X-Men Apocalypse is a great choice for your number 5 spot, and it almost made mine as well, but it was just about edged out by 2013's The Wolverine. And yes, obviously, to clarify, not X-Men Origins Wolverine, but The Wolverine. You know, because we wanted to make it so easy for fans of a series to talk about these movies. Alright, seriously, what's up with all the hate on this film? I'm not saying it's great, but I really enjoyed it. In it, we follow a much more tired and worn-out Wolverine being summoned to Japan to visit an old friend whose life he saved in World War II. While there, he gets wrapped up in an ongoing conflict having to save his friend's granddaughter from Yakuza assassins. Alright, again, why does everybody hate this movie? I mean, it's stuck reasonably close to the comics, and it's a much more realistic and scaled-down story, but still, I feel it just kind of falls apart in the last 20 minutes, which I just thought was kind of stupid fun and kind of made it okay. So one part that stands out for me in this film and that I have to talk about is the train sequence, which is just flat out great. It really nailed the feeling of speed and danger. Also, I like the tone of the film, and Wolverine's own healing powers being the driving force of the antagonist, who was in turn saved by them, is pretty cool. The actors all do a fine job, though I thought Viper was pretty unnecessary and actually kind of silly, but she didn't ruin the film for me. And most of the action scenes were pretty damn good in kind of a X-Men meets Jason Bourne kind of way. Overall, Wolverine's Japanese adventure deserves more cred and our number 5 spot. Alright, we're moving on. Joseph Ari, let's hear what your number 4 spot is.
The Wolverine, in my opinion, is another one of those films that received a lot of hate, and again, I don't get it. I thoroughly enjoyed the film. To me, it was a great action flick. It took Wolverine into a more serious direction that, in my opinion, they perfected with Logan. So yeah, I totally get why it made your list, but unfortunately, it didn't make mine. But now let's get to my number 4. X-Men, the film that started it all. When X-Men came out in 2000, I was blown away by it. I mean, I remember very vividly seeing Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine for the very first time, and I was like, holy shit, that is Wolverine. Oh my God! I mean, he looked the part, he acted the part, and even though not all the characters are that fleshed out, I believe that this movie really focuses on 4 characters, and all 4 of them are great. Logan being one of them, and I already mentioned Hugh Jackman, he's awesome. Then we got Rogue, and Rogue absolutely embodies puberty in the film. Because X-Men is about prejudice, it's about insecurities, and it's so great to actually have a teenager in the film that is struggling with her powers. And the other 2 characters are Professor Xavier and Eric Lancher, aka Magneto. These 2 have amazing chemistry. You can understand where the both of them are coming from. I love the fact that Patrick Stewart is pretty much Dr. Martin Luther King, while Eric Lancher represents Malcolm X. You understand both sides, even though morally you should be on Professor Xavier's side. I remember the movie literally opens at Auschwitz, and I was like, okay, this is accurate. You absolutely get behind Magneto. He has witnessed the terror of persecution and of genocide before, and he is not having it again. So you understand him. I love the fact that Professor Xavier and Magneto, they are frenemies. I mean, they love one another, they appreciate one another, they just have opposing viewpoints. Which is why, to this day, Magneto remains the most fleshed out Marvel villain ever. But now I'm interested. Let me hear about your number 4.
Alright, and the only spot that is exactly the same, my number 4 also goes to the original X-Men from 2000. In the film that started off the franchise, we basically get an introduction to the world of mutants, as well as the 2 different factions of the mutant sides. Professor X's, who wants mutants to harness her power for good and to protect people.
I'm Charles Xavier. Would you like some breakfast?
And Magneto's much more cynical side, who, understandably, sees humans as a threat to their existence and want to destroy them.
You Homo sapiens and your guns.
What's great here is that we really do get to see both sides of a conflict. We get to see why Magneto hates humans as much as he does, and we can kind of understand him in a way. Still though, it's nice to see Professor X kind of try to take the high route in a more Gandhi pacifist sort of way. Or, well, I guess as pacifist as you can get with Wolverine being part of your team. So sure, Sabretooth was kind of a disappointment, but some scenes that stand out are a fantastic opening, where we get to see a young Magneto at a concentration camp. As well as the hardcore introduction to Wolverine, played perfectly by Hugh Jackman.
Get out of my bar, freak.
Magneto's master plan is kind of meh, and to be honest, the film hasn't aged all that well, but it still holds up despite some flaws. I honestly considered placing this on the number 3 spot, but couldn't really justify it simply based on nostalgia. Still though, it manages to hold its own and the number 4 spot.
Don't get in my way.
We are the future, Charles, not them. They no longer matter.
Alright, so here on out, our lists are probably going to be pretty different, or I don't know, what do you say? What's your number 3?
Like I said, X-Men, definitely a must. It's the movie that started it all, and I'm so glad that it made both of our lists. But now, let's get to my number 3. X2 X-Men United. When this movie came out, I was already hyped because I love the first X-Men, and this movie, again, blew me out of the water. I think Bryan Singer really knocked it out of the park with that one, because that is a sequel that improved on everything that the first one did. First of all, I love the fact that the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants had to work together as a team in this one, because the real enemy of this film was Stryker and human prejudice, which made it so much more real, so much more relatable. The idea of bigotry was really in the foreground and represented perfectly in the scene where Bobby's parents ask him, "Have you tried not being a mutant?" And I absolutely saw the parallel, because these days you still have parents asking their kids, "Have you ever tried not being a homosexual?" But apart from that, this movie also had a couple kick-ass action sequences. This has one of my all-time favorite Wolverine Berserker scenes at the mansion. Also, him facing Lady Deathstrike was terrific, and Mystique at Alkali Lake, that was great. And Nightcrawler. So many people give this character shit, and I thought he was great. He was a great representation of the character that I knew and loved from the comic books. I thought Mystique, Storm, Jean, their characters were much more fleshed out, and the way it all concluded, in my opinion, it was kind of heartbreaking. But now I'm really interested about your number 3. Let's hear it.
Here's where things get controversial for me regarding your number 3 spot, but we'll touch on that later, because my number 3 spot is just as controversial as it goes to X-Men Days of Future Past. I know, many people see this as the best X-Men movie ever, or at least second best, but I was considering placing it on my number 4 spot. I just don't get it. I don't get why everybody loves this movie so much.
Anyone who stands in our way will suffer the same fate as these men.
Don't get me wrong, it's a good and very well made film, but I feel like it's either retreading the steps of First Class at times, or just getting too convoluted with the whole time travel stuff.
If you want to fight, Eric, I will give you a fight!
It's also a little bit repetitive, and the story doesn't really give us a whole lot of new stuff in regards to the series as a whole. But with that said, the film does have a pretty fantastic opening action sequence. An opening action sequence that is never really topped. Overall, I think this is a good film with lots of great characters, performances, production, and of course we can't forget the excellence of the scene that is Quicksilver's show stealer.
I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you.
But the script is just a little too flimsy for me, and I don't know, this just wasn't my kind of flavor. If you love it, I totally understand that. And keep in mind, I still consider this to be the 3rd best X-Men movie so far, but it doesn't really get better than the 3rd spot for me.
You abandoned us all.
Alright, that brings us to your number 2 spot. Take it away, buddy.
Okay, your number 3 is very controversial to me, and you will soon find out why. But X-Men Days of Future Past to me was terrific, it was great, and I'm happy to see it on your list, because if it wasn't on there, seriously, I wouldn't get that. Which brings me to my number 2. X-Men First Class. I remember when this movie came out in 2011, I wasn't even looking forward to it because I've just sat through X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. So the franchise really started to lose me. And in my opinion, X-Men First Class was the perfect movie to bring everything back on track. This movie reminded me why I fell in love with X-Men to begin with. It explored the origins of Charles Xavier and Eric Lenscher. And in my opinion, they found the perfect actors to portray younger versions. I knew that Michael Fassbender would kill it as Magneto, and he did. This is definitely his movie. He is the most relatable character in the entire movie. But I had no idea that James McAvoy would be every bit as great as Charles Xavier. The chemistry between these two is so engaging, and in my opinion, this is exactly how the relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi should have been in the prequels. I love the fact that they totally utilized the time period of the 70s, that they managed to accurately portray the fear of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Rose Byrne in the movie. I loved her, and that's not only because I'm halfway in love with her. Her character was great. The way it all wraps up, again, is really touching, is really heartbreaking because it puts our two main characters, our two opposing sides of the entire franchise in their starting positions, and you absolutely understand where both of them are coming from. So that's my take on X-Men First Class. Now I'm interested to hear about your number 2.
Alright, and here you go. I lied. Okay, we got another similar spot, but to be honest, I still think our lists are pretty different despite 2 spots being the same. Obviously, my number 2 spot also goes to X-Men First Class. Wow, just wow. After back-to-back disappointments in the form of X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine, I was ready for this franchise to get an undignified death in its own feces. But Matthew Vaughn and Bryan Singer knew that they had to do something different, and in my opinion, it really worked. Getting to see how Professor X and Magneto grew up together but gradually drifted apart due to differing ideals was really interesting in the way that it examined it.
Listen to me very carefully, my friend. Killing will not bring you peace.
Peace was never an option.
Seeing Magneto's youth in the concentration camp was brilliantly haunting. His revenge was sweet to see. Azazel's assault on the young mutants was awesome. Now, admittedly, Kevin Bacon and company weren't really the best villains of the series, to put it kindly, but honestly, everything else just fell into place and in my opinion made up for any other shortcomings. Perhaps it's just that my expectations were so low, but I really just feel like this film achieved everything it set out to do. It rebooted the series successfully, gave us a great new cast, and did the whole 60s era thing without being overdone and cheesy. Everything is just so well done here, and of course Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy are fantastic in it.
What an adorable lab rat you make, Charles. Don't spoil this for me, Alec. No. I've been a lab rat. I know one when I see one.
Overall, this is a first-class film for the number 2 spot.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lenscher.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
Alright, that brings us to your number 1 spot, buddy, and I think some people have already figured it out.
Unlike Professor Xavier and Magneto, the both of us can get along despite opposing views. But I'm glad that X-Men First Class made your list as well. I think it's one of those rare cases where we have a movie on our hands that is not only a great comic book movie, but a great character-driven drama from start to finish. And I'm so glad that it also made your number 2. But now let's get to my number 1. X-Men Days of Future Past. And yeah, I know this movie only made your number 3 spot, which is okay, but in my personal opinion, this movie did everything right, because the X-Men franchise had to be put back on track, and I think Bryan Singer was the right guy to do it. He professed it from the start. When I heard the classic X2 X-Men United theme song on the big screen, I lost my shit. I was like, oh my god, this seems about right. Please let this be great. And it was. The future was really grim and dark. It reminded me of Terminator. I love the fact that this movie combined both casts. And unlike you, I don't think it was over convoluted. I think everyone checked their ego at the door. And that every character got the amount of screen time that was needed to make this film work. This is also the film where Hugh Jackman looks as Wolverine as it can get. That scene where he first wakes up in the 70s and these thugs shoot him, oh my god, that's fucking Wolverine. But I love the fact that he is not Berserker Wolverine. In this film he had to use his brain to bring Charles and Eric back together to stop this shitty future from happening. And while X-Men First Class was Michael Fassbender's film in my opinion, this movie is definitely James McAvoy's film. He killed it as Professor X, and that was such an interesting take because we've never seen Charles Xavier at his lowest low. In this movie, this is exactly where he's at. He no longer has his ability because he sacrificed them in order to walk and in order to sleep. And Wolverine has to do for him what he will do for him in the future. I love that aspect so much. I love the fact that old Xavier had to teach young Xavier to hope again. That was such a heartwarming scene. And Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique. This, in my opinion, is the only time that Jennifer Lawrence killed the part of Mystique. Because in the first film, she was Raven. She was still young, and I get it. In Apocalypse, I don't get it. I don't get why she constantly looked like Jennifer Lawrence. In this film, she was blue. She had the action down. She was a cold-blooded assassin. She was everything that I loved about Mystique. But in addition to that, she also had a lot of heart. The intro scene, the interaction sequence was phenomenal. And the fact that it changed the timeline was so clever to bring everything back on track. And I almost forgot, this movie probably has the greatest display of superpowers in any movie ever. The Quicksilver scene, oh my god, it's funny, it's clever, and it's just visually amazing. The ending scene where Charles finally convinces Raven to do the right thing and it flashes back and forth between the shitty future and the moment that could change the future. Seriously, I can never watch that scene without choking up. Great movie, still one of my all-time favorite comic book movies, and definitely my #1 pick. But now, let me hear about your #1, and I think I already know what it is.
Alright, so like I said, I completely understand yours and many of your fans' decision to have this as their #1 spot. I mean, it's a fantastically made film. Something about it just didn't work for me. It's like Olives. I tried, but it doesn't work. Anyway, my #1 spot goes to X-Men 2. Yeah, I know, my list got a little less controversial and a lot more cliche, but I just can't get around the fact that this is the best X-Men film ever made. Well, so far anyway. We'll see what Logan does. Both as a sequel and a standalone film, it works great, and it's a thrilling ride from start to finish. The opening action scene in the White House is hands down the best and most gripping introduction of the entire series, and gave us an excellent depiction of Nightcrawler, courtesy of Alan Cumming.
It's outside the Oval Office.
Lock this place down!
That breathtaking action sequence is a brilliant introduction to the film and to a pace that doesn't really slow down until the heart-wrenching conclusion. In the sequel, the US government decides to crack down on mutants, attacking Professor X's school in General Stryker's genocidal quest to kill all mutants.
This facility is a school. Sure it is.
This forces our heroes to team up with the villains from the first film in order to work together for a common goal. And damn, this film just gives us tons of heavy and relevant themes of prejudice, militarization, what extent we're willing to go to in order to feel safe.
Alright.
So in today's world of people being grouped up because of race, religion, or orientation, then the X-Men series as a whole, and especially X-Men 2, is just as relevant and kick-ass as it was when it first came. I'll admit that Days of Future Past and First Class probably have more polish and are technically more well-made and produced, but the atmosphere and tone in X-Men 2 is pretty unrivaled in my opinion. It does everything X-Men should do, and does it so damn well, but I feel most true X-Men fans have to have this close to the top. And of course, it's Sci-Fi-Night's #1 pick for the best X-Men movie ever.
This mutant problem is a little...
What mutant problem?
complicated.
What exactly are you Professor of, Mr. Logan? Art.
Alright, once again, I want to say thank you to my buddy Joseph Ari. I liked your list, obviously liked mine a little bit more, but what do you guys think? Whose list was more close to your own? I don't know, what do you have to say about this episode, buddy?
Thank you once again for having me on the show. I enjoyed doing this list with you. I actually enjoyed the fact that our lists aren't the same, because that would have been boring as shit. But yeah, you guys, you get to decide which list you prefer, and I would really like to hear about your list. How would you rank the X-Men movies? Let us know in the comments section below. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone who's watched. I want to say thank you to Sci-Fi-Night and especially Sebastian Vettel Martinez. Thank you for watching, and if you like what you see here and you want to see more, then just subscribe.
Alright, and with that said, that about wraps up this episode of Sci-Fi-Night Top 5. Once again, we want to thank our buddy Joseph Ari for guesting the show, our viewers for watching this. If you have a different list, by all means, let us know what it is in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Trust me, I know how these things play out.
Oh, because you're from the future.
No, because of these.